Josh Fenton-Glynne is a Labour MP who was one of those signing a letter demanding recognition of Palestine last week. Hello to you, Josh.
Hello, how you doing?
Hi. So tell me, what are your thoughts and your reaction to that announcement from the Prime Minister?
I think it's hugely positive. I think for quite a long time now, it was a Labour manifesto commitment to recognise the state of Palestine. And for quite a long time, people have been wanting to see more action as we see what's clearly a humanitarian crisis playing out in front of our eyes.
But what about the pretty important question, Josh, of what difference this is going to make? Tell me your views on that.
We're in an odd position as the UK because we're watching what's going on, and actually the main players in all of this is going to be the US administration and the Israeli politicians. And so we have various pressure points we can use, and one of those pressure points is recognition. So we're looking at the possible pressure points we can use, and this is one of them. And I think as things are getting so dire over there, this is a time to try to use that pressure point and try to help that to build the pressure on Israel to act in humanitarian interests.
Yeah, we were just hearing from a journalist in Israel, Josh Fenton-Glynne, who said this is going to cause Benjamin Netanyahu to dig in even deeper.
I think that would be a very foolish response from Netanyahu. We are joining France as two permanent Security Council members now, making it clear that the humanitarian crisis in Gaza can't continue. And I think it would be utterly tin-eared in terms of the views of the international community if Netanyahu were to continue to ignore that.
All right, look, let me put this then to you, and here, because I'm interested in your view on this. If Palestine was to be recognised in the space of weeks, it would be a state with no borders, with no government. Just sketch out for me your vision of how a Palestinian state could come about from here.
So I think I can tell you how it won't come about, and it won't come about with expanded settlement building. It won't come about with a continued unnecessary conflict. It will come about through negotiations, including all the countries that are kind of involved in the moment of the talks, and making sure that there's no room for Hamas in the future of Palestine, but we actually get a Palestinian government and state built up. But at the moment, we've got the continued encroachment of settlements, and we've got in the West Bank and a humanitarian crisis in Gaza, both of which are moving us further away from a Palestinian state.
Yeah, look, I fully realise it's very easy to point to the obstacles, because there are no end of obstacles, and very difficult to point to a route through those obstacles towards some sort of long-term peace on the other side. But we do have to address the reality as it is at the moment, even if we do not have obviously a near-to-hand solutions, don't we? So at the moment we have to say, don't we, that in March there was a formula put together by Arab countries, including Egypt, to try to take Gaza forward. It involved putting Palestinians into an administration, a temporary administration. It involved a big international money-raising effort led by Arab states. And of course, Hamas would not be part of the picture. And all of that was rejected. Almost as soon as that idea was raised, it was blown out of the water. The portents are about as bad as they could be right now.
I think it's always darkest before the dawn, and at the moment it is pretty dark around there. It's pretty grim, but I think there's also a number of, it's got to an inflection point now. I think people can't watch continued humanitarian crisis, which is human-made, going on in Gaza, without pushing for more action and more work to have a viable Palestinian state, but also to end the suffering that we're seeing on our screens every day.
Josh, to what extent do you think Keir Starmer was responding to events in Gaza, and to what extent was he responding to pressure from his own MPs and ministers?
I think it probably owes more to the fact that we've just got through a visit from Donald Trump, and that this has been a diplomatic problem that we've understood for a long time is getting worse, and it's got to a point where I think internationally, just as with the French have made this decision, we need to see clear action from Israel that they're going to allow aid in. We're going to use every lever that we have to make that happen.
I mean, do you think it's at all possible that Israel might actually meet Starmer's conditions? That was the relief for Gazans, the ceasefire, no annexation of the West Bank, and that plan directed at least towards a two-state solution. Maybe that would be a fudge in the way of these negotiations. Is that possible? And that would lead or put pressure on Starmer to step back from recognition. Do you think that's a possibility?
I mean, if they feed Gazans, if they work towards a peace process, and we actually have a meaningful ceasefire, then I think that that's some of the aims achieved. We have agreed to recognise the state of Palestine in our manifesto. It is something that we will do, but you can only recognise it once. So actually, you need to make sure you use it at a time that can do the most good for the Palestinian people and for the prospects of a peaceful final solution.
All right, Josh, good to have you on the programme. That was Josh Fenton-Glynne, Labour MP, who supported the recognition of Palestine. Now, we're joined on the programme by Rabbi, Dr. Jonathan Romain. Hello to you, Rabbi.
Good afternoon.
Good to have you with us. Can I just hear your response to the Starmer statement yesterday?
Well, I'm 100% in favour of ending the starvation in Gaza, 100% behind the two-state solution. But I thought that his decision was totally bizarre and counterproductive. Let me give you four very rapid reasons. Number one, why should a political decision like recognising statehood be dependent on ending a famine? I mean, famine is awful. It needs to be sorted out, but it's got nothing to do with borders or government. Secondly, you have to ask yourself, why was it that Hamas launched this attack on Israel on October the 7th to begin with, and killed 1,200 Israelis and then scarpered back across the border with hostages? They weren't trying to topple Israel. That wasn't part of their game plan. What they wanted was a political reward, and they've got it. And it's a terrible message to Hamas, who, by the way, welcomed the decision that Starmer's made. And, by the way, also a terrible message to any other terrorists across the world, whatever their cause may be. All you need to do to get your ends is to take the hostages and keep them. Thirdly, yes, recognising statehood could have been a very important diplomatic lever as and when serious negotiations were getting a crunch point and perhaps were needed to be pushed over the line. But that lever's gone. We've used it up. All that future leverage has disappeared. And finally, and I think you were hinting at this yourself, this decision by Keir Starmer has been labelled as sort of virtue signalling. And that's true, because it hasn't really changed anything on the ground. All it does really is play catch up with Macron and also quell Labour backbenchers. And I think really it's more to do with politics here in England than achieving anything over in the Middle East.
Right. So Rabbi, I'm hearing all of that. If Hamas is an implacable combatant, to which there can be no compromise, can the same be said of Benjamin Netanyahu? He seems to be an implacable combatant too in this conflict. And if the step taken by Keir Starmer yesterday was misconceived, same question I put to that Labour member of Parliament a moment ago, Rabbi. What would have been a better course?
Well, let's not put them in the same category, because even if one dislikes Netanyahu,
I'm not giving them equivalents, to be clear, no, but they're two sides of a conflict. Yes. And we've discussed one now. If we could discuss the other, what would be the better way to deal with the Israeli side?
Well, I think the clever way would have just for President Trump, because that's really where the power lies, not in London but in New York, to put enormous pressure on Israel, which he can do economically and militarily, and said you have to let the aid in. And that would have been the right thing to do. It would have been possible for Trump to use that power, and it would have been sorted out the immediate problem, which is, of course, saving lives and helping the Gazans. And then move on to the political solution, and perhaps getting other people to put pressure on Hamas to release the hostages. Because once the hostages are released, Israel has no reason to be in Gaza, and that would lead to a very speedy withdrawal. I think the moral imperative to withdraw after all the hostages, dead and alive, have been released would be enormously powerful.
And the view that Israel does have a motive for being there, at least some in the government, some with influence in the government, have the wish to depopulate Gaza, to extend the business of Israel, moving into that territory and making it part of Israel.
That is true, but I think it's equally true that they are a lunatic minority fringe, which does not represent either the government as a whole, and certainly not most Israelis. And so we can't really take that seriously. Plus, of course, Israel is a democracy. And Netanyahu and the Likud are going to face an election in 2026 next year, and there's every chance it may be a change of government. And I think the other thing that was so wrong about Keir Starmer's declaration, and I'm sure you noticed this, was he said puts a lot of conditions on Israel, but nothing on Hamas. And therefore, all Hamas has got to do is just sit it out, just stick up two fingers against the British government, and then, hey presto, there's no ceasefire, and therefore they get automatic statehood recognition. And that seems far too facile and not really the way to go about diplomacy.
All right, Rabbi Dr. Jonathan Romain, thank you so much.